Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. Hello, hello, hello. Karibuni. Karibuni. Akwaba. Welcome, Pan-African Daily TV fans and followers and brothers and sisters worldwide. I hope all of us are doing well. Today we are live again on the Pan-African Daily TV on an exclusive one-on-one special topic. I hope all of you are connecting and signing in. I want to thank all of you for joining in this conversation. And we are very happy because today seems a friendly day. The weather is good. Our guest is comfortable sitting there. There's not going to be any hitchhike again with technique. And so, yes, the whole world is opening and smiling and business as usual. So do Africa and Africans worldwide. So if you're joining in on any of our platforms on social media, please make sure you click the link, subscribe, particularly on our YouTube channel, yes, and share with one another. Also, make sure that you are well set up. As you know, we are here to learn. We are here to teach. We are here to meditate, to think, and to come out with a plan that works for Africa by Africans. And so on this note, I want to thank all of you that are joining from every corner of the world, because today's topic is going to be something new, though it is something that we've all been advocating for, but it is something worth giving not just a thought, but be on spot to hear it from the horse's mouth. You don't want to miss this program. You don't want your fellow Africans to miss it. So what you need to do is to share the link and ask them to join the conversation and the teachings of today. So I hope all of us are getting ready to roll. I'll just give 2-3 seconds or minutes out there for Patrick to connect and cross-post on our other social media platforms so that we are all settled and ready for the conversation. But let me get back to the studio and find out how our general ambassador is doing today. Greetings, my
Hi, how are you? I'm doing good. I'm doing well.
Beautiful. I see you're ready.
I'm always ready to impart knowledge and interaction with our African brothers and sisters on the continent, in the diaspora, whether it's the United States, South America, Canada, or the Caribbean. We now have to work as one and as one people, one motto, one vision, one focus, and that is Africa for Africans. Repopulate Africa, bring our brothers and sisters back home, let them bring their skills, their experiences, and also their investment if they have, and come back and settle home. We don't want foreigners to be taking over our continent, using and abusing us. The days for that have gone. The colonialism days are gone, and we will not and cannot accept any more colonialism, whoever they think they are. We have to stop them, and we must stop them now.
Thank you so much. I mean, you already heard that. You've already heard the warm-up from His Excellency. Excellency, can you just say, while we're waiting, to get into the real proper conversation, could you give a little bit of idea who you are, where you've been? I know that you've been also in the Caribbean with some very, very diplomatic functions. Can you just give a rundown about your background?
Okay, well, in the Caribbean, we're looking at bringing the continent of Africa to the Caribbean and collaboration, South-South cooperation, investments both ways, trade both ways. All those are things we are working on. And then, as you know, myself and Professor Lumumba was in Tanzania, and the Burundians, Sierra Leoneans, and others were there to witness our presentation on local content and moving away from salaries and paid wages, poor wages to our people, to shareholding. That's the mantra and the narrative that we shared with the Tanzanians just 2 weeks before President Magufuli was taken away, from us. But at that point in time, his vice president, who's now the president, stayed and listened to what we had to say about legal frameworks. The days of where people came and just misused and abused the resources of the continent, and we got nothing. They produced and sent back finished product to us. We have to stop that. We have to start producing ourselves, using our raw material. It's not going anywhere. It's here. It's on the continent. So you can't continue to take it out and process and send back to us. If you want to use some of the resources to make telephones, start a telephone industry where the resources are and share it with the country. The days for just taking all our raw materials like the Chinese and others are doing, we have to stop it. It must be stopped. If you don't stop it now, we are at a point of no return. It will be a diminishing return, and the poverty of the continent will become very apparent in 10, 15, 20 years' time. We have to stop it now, and the youths are the ones who have to stop it, because the continent is made up of 75% youths. When the elders go, who have signed all these rubbish deals with Chinese and others, they are the ones, the youths are the ones who are going to inherit the burden. So we've got to reverse these things. These are things that we have to have serious conversations about, and we must, and then put into place, teams of people to start reviewing everything and acting on it and protecting our resources, protecting our people, protecting, all that we have that belongs to us. We can't go to any other country and take their resources. We can't go to any other country and behave the way others are behaving on the continent. Africans of the past have been too pious. We've been too welcoming. We've been too nice. And all that is rubbish now, because you don't go to other people's country and they treat you, well, with welcoming us to go and take their resources. They will not allow it. Absolutely not. Especially Africans. But they will do businesses with their brothers, and they will invite their brothers to work with them, but not Africans for sure. So we have to take that stance, stand up against all these powers who want to depopulate the continent. I mean, Kissinger said it, and all the other pandemics that they are putting in place is to try to depopulate the continent, to take the resources, and all the loans and debts are normally for infrastructure that is used to take out the resources. They're not doing it, and they're not giving you loans for things that will help you in health, etc. That's why we've got to look inwards and plan our own African development goals yearly, rather than 2063 or 2090, etc. Those, they don't fit the African dream and the African vision and the Africa that we want. We have got to look at our own vision, our own initiatives, our own agendas, our own plans, and we must unite with it. Unity, of course, is key. As I said before, the days of talking is over. The days of talking, we have many people who have brilliant academic pontifications and make statements, etc. But where is the implementation? What are we doing to implement real change? And that is what is the focus, and must be the focus of all Africans now. We must now focus on implementing plans and carrying them through. If you look at what other countries have had, they've had 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 15-year plans, 20-year plans, and they move towards that all the time, inching forward with their plans. And our plans have been torpedoed because they encourage us to stop doing whatever we started to do and start again, and take resources from us, take money from us, give us loans. No, that has to stop.
Beautiful. I mean, we touched base with you, Excellency, because there are a lot of questions that were being raised way back in the beginning when we started. We had comments or Africans in the world saying, but we've never had an army. Africa has to also think of going to war someday. And we've been listening, ears have been on the ground. Like we said, we do more of teaching, awareness, sensitization, and lectures here. So when the questions come, we throw it out for a survey. So we did a survey actually on this issue of Africa owning a liberation army, and the conversations and the topics, and we asked, why do Africans think that this is the time that we need a power force that is engaging every African on the continent and in the diaspora? And we have some points that I would like to enumerate those points according to this research. And then from your own point of view as a military general, or as someone that has a lot of expertise in what we're talking about, for you to give us a sense of clarity. Is it possible that Africa can have this kind? We see military people in the uniforms and blacks wearing that. Is it really an army of liberation of the African, or this is just political structures or tools that are being used on the continent? So, His Excellency, I'll just ask you to bear with me while I list some of the points that were raised up, and then we take particularly the case study of China in Africa. That is going to be our focus, and we're going to look at it and this. And so when we throw out, the question was, what is the influence or the Chinese agenda on the continent of Africa? And these were the things that we all heard, or the feedback that we got from this survey. They said Chinese agenda on the on Africa is to depopulate Africa. They have a plan, a very quiet plan. It is the expansion of a China race in Africa. They are focused on the roads and the infrastructure initiatives. They are not really focused on educating the population. And then they also talked about the multiplications of their institutes, such as the Confucius Institute. And they talked about the police state. If we look in South Africa, in Zambia, we already have, Chinese putting on the military attire like it's a Chinese state. They also talk about the military base of China in Africa. And they also talk about some areas like the no-go areas on the continent, and the popular coronation of African kingdoms and local communities, putting Chinese as chiefs on the continent. That one we already talked about here. They also talked about the issue of the Chinese are taking the agricultural land to ship products from Africa to go and produce them in China and bring them back to the African market. They talked about taking over our fishing and processing, everything shipped to China. There are just a couple of things. Just bear with me. I have to list all them down. They talked about the free trade zones area, which the Chinese are becoming more and more visible on the continent. They talked about the destruction of our environment with impunity. They talked about the destruction of Africans' livelihood with impunity. They talked about the stealing of our raw materials, beating of our people, locking away of our people, and Chinese laws are being executed, on the continent in a very physical and physical manner. And they talked about the preferential treatment even of our government. The governments will give preferential treatment to Chinese on the continent rather than their citizens. They also talked about they encourage that the Chinese also are engaged, the government of Chinese engage in the corrupt politics of Africa by giving out these loans when they know that there is not going to be any accountability. They talked about their toxic goods that are being sent on the continent that are not really standardized. There's no control whether these goods are fit to be consumed on the African market. And then they talked about this, the kind of packaging, even that they come with these goods. They are plastic that is now destroying the African coast, and yeah. And then they talked about they also talked about they build infrastructures that are tapping away the technology on the continent and giving sensitive information back to China. They talked about the EAU a building in Addis Ababa, and they also talked about a building in Kenya. I think it's a telecommunication structure out there that collects all data and information and send it for intelligence back to China. They also mention, yes, this one I've talked about, the engagement with the politicians, and even the mention of the Chinese as a language, as an alternative language on the continent is becoming very visible. This incident was reported during the last visit of the delegation of China, of Chinese, or the Chinese delegation, when they met with Her Excellency Samia Suluhu of Tanzania, and they proposed Chinese, or Cantonese as a language on the continent. Then they also talked about the illegal migration of Chinese into the African continent without papers, that most of them come in containers, and they operate companies and minings illegally without permit. I mean, it's a whole lot. As you can see here, these are the questionnaires that we sent out, and Africans had to fill them and send them back to us. And they also talked about they don't pay taxes. There is no way that they are whole accountable for everything that they do. And they talked about the cheap labor they employ even Africans, and they maltreat them. They treat them as subhumans. They abuse them. They call them monkeys in their companies, in their corporations, that they smell. And then, okay, they also talked about as a communist state that China is, China has no respect for our traditions, our spirituality. They don't have the respect for humans. So for them, it is not about a cooperation or partnership on equal terms, but it's about the colonization of the population, or building another Chinese colony in Africa. Then they also talked about the need of the Trojan horse that is being put in place. And I mean, a couple of things, that it is never going to be a partnership of equal terms. It is just going to be, this is the second page filled with all these questionnaires. Like I said, it is all proofs. It is all here for everyone to see. We are not just fabricating. We are bringing out, we send out questions to Africans worldwide and get their opinion, and we set the topic according to what they have said. So this is just a lot going on, His Excellency. And during the COVID breakout, we saw all these incidents that Africans are complaining. It just recently, the China government can never pretend now to be a good friend to Africa, when they were the one chasing Africans out of China and beating them in the public and dehumanizing them. So it can never be an equal partnership. So I come back to studio to address this concern. According to this agenda, what is the way forward? What is
right? Thank you very much, Susan. I'm happy that the diaspora and Africans have finally woken up and sent you in their survey of what they saw, what they are concerned about, and it is very clear. The Chinese people have what is called the People's Liberation Army. Every Chinese belong to the People's Liberation Army. They are a communist country. So when you talked about dehumanization, they don't think of God. They don't believe in any religion. So as far as they're concerned, human beings who are not Chinese are there to be used. Even their own people, they have done a lot of killings and executions, etc. So first again, let's use the Chinese model. If they have the People's Liberation Army and they had to liberate their people from whatever they had, poverty, etc., we must do the same. And I propose, and I have proposed before, that we now set up the African People's Liberation Army. And we must do that so that we start to protect our people, our livelihood, and our resources. Very important. The reason for that is that if care is not taken in the next 10, 15 years, with all that you have listed there, Confucius Institute, Road and Belt Initiative, infrastructure, police stations, naval and military bases, we will be colonized. You know, the Chinese wrote, and it's a reading in all military colleges, The Art of War. The Art of War is something that every African must read, because then you will understand the Chinese psychology for taking over. If they don't confront you, they'll move quietly and get you one way or the other. So you have to recognize your enemy within. Right now, yes, from all the list you've said there, it shows that there is a clear and present danger. We already know the other dangers of the other colonials, and we've had history of 100 or 200 years with them. So, we know how to treat with them for the time being. They too have their own agenda, but we must deal with the clear and present danger. The clear and present danger is the enemy within. You talked about the Trojan horse. Yes, there is a Trojan horse, and that is they're all carrying out the plan of Mother China. You talked about the way they treat us with regards to goods and services, etc. For example, I don't know if you read about it, they executed many of their own people for tarnished goods, just even tainted milk. They executed the person who supplied that. If you steal from the government, you are executed. If you are corrupt, you are executed. However, they are allowed to come to Africa, ship toxic goods. They're allowed to pay corrupt officials in Africa and get away with all of that. And when they go off to China, they will not be executed, because as far as they're concerned, they're carrying out the agenda. So we must now start to protect our interests. What is our interest? The livelihood, the lives, the resources of our continent, because that's what they're coming here for, and also to populate, right? And depopulate the continent. So when they're coming in containers, as you have said, and most people have, I'm sure those are real cases that they are talking about there. They come in droves, and then they just scatter around the country. And most times they go to the rural areas, they go to where the mining is, they go to where agriculture is, and they start their businesses. And corrupt communities and chiefs are in collaboration with them. That has to be stopped. So we now set up the African People's Liberation Army, and every community, every village must now have members protecting their interests. And it will be the youths. It must be the youths, because it's 75% of them that occupies the continent at the moment. And they are digital, right? So they know what is happening. And of course, because there is no help from the government, they now have to agitate. They must all become activists, and they must all become a core center for African People's Liberation Army. Don't forget, we fought wars to be liberated on the continent from all colonial masters. Are we going to wait till we are colonized to set up a resistance army? Are we going to wait till we are colonized to be a liberation army, which is the continent now? It is not just one place. The whole continent was colonized by different colonists. Now we have a common enemy. One enemy that is planning to take over the continent entirely. Not China, not France, not England, not Portugal, etc., like they separated before. We have one common enemy now. One common enemy is planning to take over the continent. There's no doubt about it. All the moves show you. The thing is that the moves are all predictable. You want to set up police stations in Africa. You want to put military bases. You want to do only infrastructure, roads, so that you can, and rails, so that you can easily take out raw material, and then you want a lot of Chinese to come and populate the country. So you take over the resources of the country, you take over the agriculture of the country, you take away the fishing of the country. Where will we be in 10 years' time? The multiple or multiplier effect has started. So you have to stop it. And how do you start? By having these units of the African People's Liberation Army, which I have proposed and must start. You now start to look into what are they doing in my village? What are they doing in my town? What are they doing in my country? And examine every single one of the activities and get those activities reported and acted upon. You must do that, because there's thousands of them operating illegally in the country and misusing and abusing our people and our resources. So that's the first step. Secondly, you have to now re-engage. You want to come and bring your funds here and you want to partner with us, it is on a shareholding basis. We are not interested in wages and salary and being pauperized by these people. You must bring your technology and transfer it. And we give you a timetable. In Dubai, for example, you cannot have a company in Dubai unless you have a Dubai or Emirati as a shareholder. And he will have preferential shares. So it will be 60-40. You come, you bring your investment, etc., but he shares in whatever, because his property, services, and ability is there. You have to enrich the person. And everybody falls in and does what the Emiratis say. At 60, you leave. You can never become an Emirati citizen. You know, you can be there for a period of time, make your money, make your profit, but an Emirati will share with it. So the same model we in Africa must start. We must say, okay, you're coming to my country, you will have a local as your partner with a 60-40. We work out a timetable. 5 years' time is what we predict you will recover your investment. Another 2 years for, you know, the profit that we will agree, and then you hand over to the local. Simple as that, because the patrimony of the country belongs to the country and the people of the country. That is what we must do. We must start that. And then we must enforce it. We have to now ask for local content, monitoring, auditing, enforcement, and penalizing. We are not doing that. And that is why Professor Lumumba and I then spoke to Tanzania about those key things: the legal framework, the compliance, the auditing of what you do, the enforcement. If you don't, we penalize you or we throw you out of the country. That's what has to happen. You know, you cannot operate, you know, in a state of nobody is going to enforce or make you compliant. No, we have to make it happen. The youths have to say, we've discovered these people in my village trying to mine. Who did they work with to get this this license? Do they have a license? Are they incorporated? Are they paying taxes? Are they shareholding with members of the community? Not salaries or wages. Are they shareholding? Are they transferring skills? Those are key things that we have to look at. And so the African People's Liberation Army must be founded now and start to ensure that the resistance is starting now. We can't wait till we are colonized. You talked about Confucius Institutes. Why are they putting Confucius Institutes in every country? Everybody must learn Chinese. So at the end of the day, your language and your tradition goes, you become a Chinese speaking individual so that everything you do becomes Chinese. You're focused, subliminal. You are thinking Chinese. That's what it does. If you start speaking the language, start thinking, you are becoming a black Chinese. But you'll be a sub-Chinese because you're not anthropologically a Chinese. So you see that there is a plan. You see that there is an agenda, and they're moving inch by inch by inch. The Chinese are very good at moving at one step at a time. What did Mao Zedong say? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So we now have to turn that on them. The same plan. The journey of African people's liberation is by taking the first step. The first step is setting up our liberation army like they did. They have some good models. They have some good strategies. Learn their strategies, take their plans, and turn it on them. So we must now start the journey of 1,000 miles of freedom by taking the very first step, protecting our lives, our livelihood, our property, and our resources. And that must start now. I'm not talking about next week, tomorrow. Now. People must start thinking, right, let's get started. There's a logo that I have put together, which you can put it up and put it on a BlackBerry. You don't need, at the moment, we don't need arms yet until we are forced to take up arms. But in the meantime, we must have the spirituality of liberation in our minds, of freedom from enslavement and colonialism in our minds. And we must show a physical presence that we are here to watch monitor, get rid of if necessary, and recover what is ours. So you wear a BlackBerry with a logo that says you're African People's Liberation Army, just like the Chinese do. Chinese are part of a population of liberation people, and we must have the same thing to be able to counter what is the Trojan horse that you talked about and the enemy within. They are the clear and present danger at the moment, more than anybody else. Because why? They want the entire continent for themselves. Don't forget, they're in a little mass of country, and they are huge population. They need to expand their population and find food and resources for them to survive. Where is it that they need to go? Africa. That's the plan. Africa is their plan for, that's why they want to depopulate Africa and repopulate it with Chinese. We must say what it is and not pretend. And, oh, it's okay, let's just have Chinese come and invest and lend us money and we give them whatever they want. That's a rubbish, absolute rubbish. The days for that is over and must be over. The youths must wake up and decide that we must stop that nonsense. We have to stop it, because we are going to be the ones who will be their servants in 10, 15, 20 years' time as their population grows quietly on the continent. It's growing on the continent. I don't know if you have done a survey on how many Chinese are on the continent, but there is a figure.
We're working on that. Yes, we're working on that.
You're working on that?
Yes.
Yes, you need to find out. Then you need to find out how many are in each country. Then you need to find out what are they doing in the country. Then you need to find out who is legally there, right? Then you need to find out, are they paying taxes? Then you need to find out and start a revolution that they must have local content. Local content is a key thing that will ensure that Africans participate in whatever they're doing and also enforce, compliance with local content law. Every African country must set up a local content law so that you're coming to the country. This is what our policy is. You will transfer technology, you will bring your investment, you will transfer skills, and you will make your profit and share it with the local community or local partner. And, thereafter, thank you very much, you go. So you could design something, build something, operate it, but the next step is transfer. Right? And teach our people. If you really mean well for us to develop, then that's what you will do. Honestly, that is how you will behave. You're behaving as though we, as you talked about, equal partners, that we are equal partners, that we are humans, that we are a country that needs development. And if you say that, they like to lie, oh, we are the friends of Africa. Rubbish. Which friends of Africa? What friends of Africa? And you are encouraging your people to come and pay corruption, to provide shoddy work, provide toxic goods, and all those areas that, is dehumanizing the Africans. Pharmaceuticals, food stuff. Look how many people give you false rice, false this, false that. I'm sure you've seen programs on YouTube about,
plastic rice.
Africans eating rubber. They hide the chemicals inside different types of pharmaceuticals. Africans should not be buying anything from China. Nothing that is harmful to the body, nothing that could be harmful to yourself. Whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's vaccines, we don't need those things at all, because you do not know what is the content of these things, whether it's going to genetically change your DNA, etc. These are things that need to be examined. We have doctors, we have virologists, we have epidemiologists. They should examine these things. What are we doing with that? And they're giving things so freely. No, there's no free gift. There is no free gift. And Africans should not accept any free gifts from these people who we know are now a clear and present danger to the entire continent. It is not just one country, just moving country by country by country and giving you long, big lead debts over your neck that they know, they've already assessed, they've done their economic analysis. They know that you cannot in 10 years pay back this loan. And they'll ensure that your economy will be wrecked and cannot pay back these loans, and then they say they will move in to take it over. No, reverse all those contracts. The young activists must now demand from the government, we want to see those contracts in English. Most of the contracts are in Chinese, and stupid leaders just sign away their lives and then just take money, take loans, which is cornered by their cronies, and there's nothing that the rest of the population benefits. Do you know how sad it is to walk down any street in Africa and see so many of our people begging, impoverished, you know, no health, when we as Africans should be concentrating on ensuring that our hospitals, our doctors, you know, our researchers are paid to ensure the health and food security of our people, instead of going on like beggars. They know that we just love begging. Stop the begging. We cannot continue to beg. For what? We have the resources. Put your mind and your intelligent professors, doctors, engineers, researchers to work and let them start producing. We are just buyers. Buyers. A Chinese will go and set up a company in your, or not a company, a facility in your own country, doing nails, doing this, doing that. Can't you do it yourself? Can't you not do it yourself? But can you go to their country and go and set up any business? All they want to do is to come there and trade, buy the goods and services, send it back to your country. Most times, third and fourth class quality of goods. And some of these people should be shot. Some of these Africans who go there and take knowingly well that these goods and services will not last, and it is just to monopolize money for themselves. It is wrong. And what you're doing is that you're contributing to their belief of what Africans are all about, that they don't care about their people. So you have to stop that. And that's why the unity is to unite as a liberation army and form a resistance right now.
Good. His Excellency, I'm just going to put the logo that you sent to me on the African People's Liberation Army, so you can describe a little bit or how the concept would function, you know, with the logo.
Okay.
Yes. So
yes. The concept is, you know, we have to have something that shows that we are fearless. The black mamba at the side there is the snake, you know, and that is deadly. So Africans have to become deadly. The next side is the tiger, or if you want to put a lion, that's the killer of the jungle. And then we have in the middle a killer gorilla. So since we are monkeys, let's use the killer gorilla as one of the fearless part of our logo, and wear that on your berry so they know that there's a presence of an African Liberation Army unit, an African Liberation member, monitoring what they're doing, reporting on it, and getting rid of them where necessary if they don't have any legal right to be in your community or your country. And then ask for whatever they're doing, even if they have a legal right, to review it. Because the legal right gives them the impression that they can do anything to you and your community. If you look at what happened, was it in the Gambia? They're processing your fish, taking away the livelihood of fishermen, shipping the processed fish back to China, mixing it, as they say, as whole food, and sending it back to you as food, right? They're taking anything that you have, imitating it as well, and producing poisonous substances for you. 5 years down the road, you die, people think, you know, it was just a normal death, when you don't know what you took in as part of what they're doing. They are very dangerous people, and they've shown it. It's been exhibited all over Africa. So we now have to say, we need to protect ourselves, and we need to set up just like them, follow their model. You have the People's Liberation Army, that's all of China. We have the African People's Liberation Army, all of Africa. So in every community, every village, every city, every town, we must be our own spies. Spy on the enemy within. Spy on the clear and present danger. Put enforcement in place. Put compliance in place. Put auditing in place. Put a legal framework in place that they must comply with. Professor Lumumba talked about it. We showed the Tanzanians what they have to start doing, and they are following. And we are preaching the same thing to all of Africa. Put a main local content law in place. That is one of the key things that will activate and give traction quickly to stop what is happening. And we have to stop the enemy within right now. The enemy within the continent right now, of course, is China, right? There are other enemies, there's no doubt about that. But the one that has the clear and present danger for the continent is clear from what you have said there, and from the survey and from the reports back from people. They are scared, but they don't know what to do. So this is a solution. Solution is to set up and start to activate. I also talked about the youth who are digital. And I've said they can set up their own digital army as well. So they can monitor digitally, hacking if they need to, into what they are doing. I mean, look at what they did in the African Union, as you said. You know, at midnight, they were sending back all the data, messages, information that took place during the day on discussions with the members of Africa who represent the African continent. So they know exactly what our plans are, what our plans in the future are going to be, and then they just strategize against it for what they need to do until they were caught and it was stripped out of the AU. How many other countries are they doing that with? Kenya, they have a big telecoms tower, right? And nobody is saying anything about what they're doing. Who are they transmitting messages to and about? And, you know, so they're spying within your own country and they are doing nothing about it. That should not be happening. That should be shut down. Every other country where they are building infrastructure, and it's only the Chinese, you know, they only bring their own labor. Most of them are prisoners anyway. And they flood the country with their own labor force. You are not employed when we shouldn't be anyway, but you have no part in the learning of the skills of what they are doing, and you are just an onlooker or a water carrier. None of your engineers are employed. None of your construction experts are employed, you know, and you just have to sit back. Everything is done by them. So we've got to stop that, Susan. It must be.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I mean, you're saying something that brings us to the initial question of what is an African culture? We have been seeing tools or mechanisms that really give us a culture. Now, a culture, from what we are seeing, is the revolutionary spirit of the people to gain ownership, protect, defend at all costs its territory and its integrity and its value systems. Now, if you look at from what you are saying and to define, so we don't even have a culture. When we begin to put languages and put them a culture, we have no unique language, so we have no culture of communication. If we have a culture of defense, we don't have this units of protection like this. People come into your village, they are doing whatever thing, digging your road, even taking water, you don't question, you just pass. So we don't have a culture of protection.
So that is why we need to have, that's why we need to have a resistance liberation army. We must, because otherwise they will take over. You will just be sitting back and wondering, what can you do? And they lock you out. They will put maybe fencing around your water resource, your mineral resource, etc. And you're just onlooking. You know, look at what happened in Gambia. The people realized their livelihood was at stake and they had to revolt. They had to break down the walls of the company and get rid of the people there. So we have to take that kind of activism because, as I said before, what is the Confucius Institute there to do? It is to change your language into Chinese. It's to change your culture and your attitude, right? Because if you start thinking Chinese, talking Chinese, you are becoming Chinese. So it's easier to overcome you. Your culture, our tradition, our culture, our way of life, our values must be protected. The only way to protect it is to defend it. And the only way to defend it is to form yourself into a liberation and a resistance force before it becomes too late. I mean, when we got into liberation movements, It was because it was too late. We were colonized, atrocities were happening, people were killing our people, cutting off their necks, cutting off their legs, shooting them at will, right? That's what happened in the past 200 years. Are we going to now go and put our future African young people into the same 200 years in the future that they've been the same, and at that point in time they have to, and with technology now it'll be more difficult. It'll be more difficult to have a resistance movement and to go against the new colonizers, because that's how they see themselves. What they're good at is copying. They've copied what they've seen the British done, what they've seen the French done. The politicians say, oh, we are not going to go their way. We're going to take the whole continent. And that's what they're planning to do. We need everything that the continent has for our people. Because look at it. They are thinking of their people. They are running out of, well, not running out, they have run out of space. They have run out of space and they are an exploding population. There is no place that they can, nobody will allow them to come into their country and take over their resources and take over their land. The only place that is stupid enough is Africa, because we have dubious leaders and dubious officials. So they, as far as they're concerned, head there, everybody, head there, just go there, pay off whoever you have to pay off, and start, start to organize, bring in your families, bring in people, whether it's in containers, whether it's on ships, whether it's cross borders, and bring them and populate Africa whilst we depopulate Africa. That's really the agenda. Depopulate Africa, populate with the Chinese. If you go back into the history of the Chinese, there are several ethnic groups that they decimated, within and outside their borders to take over land and property. So it is not new what they want to do. It's not new. They've done it. Go back and read a bit of history of how China developed, and you'll see exactly what they've done. And they have no conscience. They have no Christianity. They have no Muslim. As far as those who are Christians have to hide. Those who are Muslims are jailed and executed. So that they have no conscience whatsoever. They're dehumanized. As far as I'm concerned, their thought processes are robotic, clinical. We are just to be enslaved. They already, as you said, they call us monkeys. Well, our killer gorillas will go after them. And that's part of them. Our black members.
Okay. I think he's been cut off, or we're having some, I hope we would get him here. I think from every indication, I still wanted us or him to actually, for us to get to a point where we understand what is the game, what is the agenda. Now we see Chinese has an agenda. The question comes back to us. What is our own agenda? What is the African agenda? The Chinese have the strategy of protecting their own. Now, what is your own agenda as Africa? So if you look at the whole plan, it is because we don't have a culture. And now, like I said, if we have to look at, one would say it is very correct for Africans to copy the role model of the revolutionary martyrs of Africa. That is a culture. A culture is the spirit. We keep talking about our spirituality and we're talking about our ancestral. That is a tool to spirituality. That is not a spirituality. As a people, our spirituality is defending your neighbor, your family, yourself. That's the connection. That's the symbolic unity that we're talking about. But if you look at all the agenda, Africa has no culture. We have different chops and parts of culture. That's why we speak all foreign languages. That's why even it is easy for a third colonizer, as been described, or that we are seeing now, to even come and we adopt Confucius when we haven't even had a common language of communication on the continent. Now we could understand from simple facts and basics that we have to start. And that journey begins now. It's a journey of a 400 years, 200 years, 50 years, 5, 10. There has to be a start. And from every indication, because we don't have a culture, now who do we look for to a culture? We look at martyrs. We look at freedom fighters. We look at liberators. They become your role model. They become your teachers. They become your influencers. People who fight for the integrity of their continent to protect one another. That is the philosophy of the African Ubuntu. Until we get that in our local languages and communities and children starting from our homes to teach our African self, and it starts from the home. How much more if we would not leave a common culture of how do I say, arrogance, lies, yes, hierarchy of, we also have to really divorce some cultural ethics that we have that are standing against us. If we teach our children from what the Bible is saying, if you don't respect your mother and your father, you're going to go to hell. And then you ask yourself, if my mother is a killer and my father would tell me to kill one another, I would obey because a book asks me to obey that. That is the question. We don't have a culture. When we don't have a culture, our children are vulnerable. We can't even orientate them to defend themselves because we, even as parents, don't defend them. We don't allow them to ask questions. We don't allow them to question authority. We're so dictatorial from even our own methods that we can never be free from our own selves. Probably the enemy from within starts from us. Start from us to define the culture. What kind of culture? Today we see other countries, they have memorials, murals, walls, museums. What do they do at these museums? They celebrate their warriors. What did the warriors do? Show me one museum on the continent of Africa that represents all the heroes of Africa, women, men, children, everyone that has paid a price for the freedom of the African in any way or the other, be it cultural or tribal heroes. Where do we find that on the continent of Africa? It is time that we wake up and teach ourselves. Who do we belong to? Do we actually belong to ourselves? And if we belong to ourselves, what unites us? We talk about unity, unity, unity. What is the core essence of unity? I asked the other day. Unity has to have an action. It has to have a symbol. It has to have a structure. What is unity? Unity as a word means nothing if you don't see the symbol. If you don't see the action, there's no unity. We can pretend to be as unified as we think we are. It's just an illusion until we begin to have a culture of defense and maintaining of our integrity, of getting into a motherhood function to build the community. When we look at the African women warriors, have we ever talked about them? What were their roles? What was the role of Ya Asante-Wa? What was the role of Nefertiti? What were their roles? How did they support even the warriors during the fight? We see it in every culture. We see their statues, and these statues are even parading on our own continent. Where are your own heroes? So because you don't have a reference, you don't have a role model, you have nothing. They will bring you their role models and they will bring you. Now, as an African child, has a model of a Superman, of a flying man that created something, a magic. His Excellency, if he's back, he's going to tell us about the initiation of the African avatar. Do we have those symbolic giants? We talked about the African warriors. Do we have symbols for it? Where do our children see this apart from talking? Where do they see it? Today we begin recollecting our history. Where will our children know about this? Even the youth, we're still so confused. Role modeling through other infrastructures, through other images. Where are your own? Where are they? These are the ancestors you're talking about. We are talking about until we begin to see ourselves. Then we have that culture. Because a culture defends the martyrs, the liberators, particularly as we are developing. If we look at the China model, they have their heroes and they celebrate them every year. Germany, they have their heroes. They celebrate them every year. Britain, America, all the symbol, everything. Where is your own that unifies you and shows you this is the integrity of my warrior? His Excellency, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, what happened? I'm so curious.
Well, glitches. Sometimes you don't know if these glitches are planned or try to pull out what we have to say and messages we have to
Yes.
send, but we live with that. As chairman of Africacy, because this is the platform I'm speaking from. I'm speaking from the platform of chairman of Afrocacy, which is Africans doing it for themselves, by themselves, African solutions to African problems. I'm also chairman of African Development Goals Initiative. So I'm speaking from this platform. And together with PLO Lumumba, we're coordinating, mentoring our youths and giving them vision and direction. I was just talking about the fact that our youths are very digital. So they too, as you talk about warriors, I'm happy you spoke about warriors. We are talking now about Digital African Warriors Network. Set up networks among yourselves as digital warriors. Those of you who are high tech, do that so that you can assess, for example, there are telecoms companies, there are messages that they are sending out from your country or your community, find out what it is they are doing. Get to know what the hell they are doing in terms of spying on your country and in your community with their telecoms. Since we have strong telecoms, high-tech, digital warriors of our youths, let them start using that as activists, so that they know what is happening in their country. Because, the older analog folks, they're just allowing people to, or allowing them, especially the Chinese, to come in and then set up their own telecoms infrastructure, and you have a clue. It was a high-tech young African warrior, digital warrior, that found out what they were doing in Addis Ababa at the AU at midnight. They were just transmitting all the information back to Beijing. So now our digital warriors must do the same. They now have to start investigating in their countries. That's also part of it. That's part of our defense, because now strategy has to do with cyber warfare. Now strategy has to do with bio warfare. Find out what they're doing. I mean, I remember coming through Addis Ababa a few months ago, and every single aircraft was filled with Chinese and in bio warfare suits. You ask yourself the question, why are they wearing and moving so many people across the continent in biowarfare suits? The first thing you have to think of, are they carriers of the various viruses? One has to ask the question. It's too ominous. If you think about a virus starting the same place everywhere in the world at the same time, we have to examine things like that. We have to think about how is that possible? How is that really possible? People are not doing enough reading, they're not doing enough research, they're not doing enough investigation, and we have specialists who could look into things like that. What are they really doing? So we have to put ourselves to fight modern warfare, as the Art of War says, the Chinese book on military strategy. Overpower without confronting. So if if they're using cyber technology and cyber warfare to bring down your governments, bring down your systems, spy on them, then you have to counterattack that. You must also have a cyber warfare set of specialists monitoring what they're doing. If viruses as part of the biowarfare is being unleashed on the continent, we need to have our own virologists examining those things as well too, to find out what are these strains, are they contracted? Because if something is not natural occurring, then it is made in a lab. and that is part of biowarfare. There is a lot of proof that these things are available and are being used. So we need to investigate every aspect of their activity on the continent, because they are now the clear and present danger and the enemy within.
Okay. Thank you so much, His Excellency. We have put on what we call the wall, our hero and ancestral wall of Matthias and our hero, and we'll be sharing that on our YouTube this week. So, but there are still some spaces that we actually could not go through this research to pick up all the Matthias that we know. We had to select a couple of them. They're 50 something in their numbers that we're still counting. So we would present that wall to you, and when you would have an idea, any African that is saying this was a hero and you did it and know it, bring that hero to the wall. We have to start by advocating and looking and tapping into that energy. Without that, we're going to still be them in our minds if we don't have a point of reference. So, His Excellency, you talked about the African avatar. Where are we at that?
Well, we have to get back linking with our ancestors. Our ancestors have always been guiding us over time and over our lives. The connection with our ancestors is one of the key things we have to tap into if we have to get our spirituality to be intact and to carry on. Part of our tradition is our ancestors, our elder folks, because don't forget, part of our history is oral. A lot of it has been oral, and we are losing that. So we need to now tap back into the African ancestors, and we'll tell you about the African avatar later on, because we are putting some things together. It is the connection between, our ancestors and our Africans on the continent and wherever they are in the world in the diaspora.
Beautiful. It is always a pleasure to have you here. And like you said, now, when you said it's something is not tomorrow, it is now that we're starting.
Yes.
I know you would not want us to discuss the structure here. These are things that you're putting in the background, you together with the other elders and these key members. Now, I just want to throw a shout back to our thousands of viewers that are following your conversation now and said, yes, we thank you for signing in just to listen to this lecture, and we hope that you get the power. Just one word: we're never going to have an institute where people will sit in the classroom, go through and own a certificate. This is already your institute to gain back your power and your knowledge. So every little thing that our guest is saying here, like our Excellency, please make sure you're noting down. And if not, you have to go back and rewatch these videos, share it with one another in the community. That is the beginning of the Liberation Army. Over to you, His Excellency.
Yes, well, as we said, there are different areas of the Liberation Army. We talked about cyber warfare against our people and spying on our people, counter that. We talk about biowarfare, that is real. We need to look into that and have our specialists look into that. We need digital warriors, they need to start and link together and tell themselves they are part of the African People's Liberation Army. They're the digital division. The virologists, we are the, biowarfare division. We need physical presence. So now, the youths in their villages and the community now rise up and be identified as part of the African People's Liberation Army. As I'm saying, even if all they do is they wear, a symbol of who they are, a BlackBerry with the symbol of the African People's Liberation Army logo. That in itself is a presence, and they will feel and become part of the vision. Just having on the symbolism, unite themselves and work together to get rid of the common enemy. There are other aspects. The other aspects is the local content. So those who are visionaries, those who are Africans doing it for themselves by themselves, will now challenge the government and the government agencies to enforce, incorporate, and empower a local content policy for their country. That is very vital, because that would be one of the first barriers to stop, the invasion and the misuse and abuse of our people. Local content. Legal framework, as I said, compliance, auditing, monitoring, and penalizing. When they see that and realize that Africans are serious and that they have a local content policy in every country, they now know that they have to change their game, because now Africans have woken up. The local content is the most important aspect and key to that African liberation, because we are liberating ourselves and saying, you're coming in, you will partner with us. You come in, you will transfer your skills. You're coming in, you will share your profit. You're coming in, you will make us shareholders. You're coming in, you'll make your profit and go. End the story. Because we have all the resources that they want. And instead, wherever we have the resources, if it's mining, we're all mining together there, right? Because you have the equipment that we don't have. But you will teach our people how to make those equipment, how to manufacture those equipment, how to transfer the skills in running those equipments, how to maintain those equipment, right? Those are key essentials. We do not want any of your institutes. We are not going to force to speak Chinese and come be a black Chinese, or change the Chinese culture and lose our language. Because subtly, once that starts to happen, and you speaking Chinese, every one of us speaking Chinese, that becomes the lingua franca of the continent. That becomes the lingua franca of the continent. Don't you see, they've put them there and they're encouraging everybody to come and learn Chinese. For what? What happened to our own language? You learn our language, right? And talk to us if you want to. If you don't want to, use the general lingua franca, which is English. Your contract should be in English, not Chinese. So you're forcing us to learn your language, learn your culture, learn it so that we lose ours. Because over a generation, that is what will happen. That is what will happen. So take back your Confucius Institute and shove it up wherever and take it back to China. We don't need that. We need, if you as an individual want to learn Chinese, go to China if that's what you want to do from a studying point of view. You can go there if you want to learn Chinese for whatever reason you want to, or Japanese. That's fine. But you're not going to enforce it on us, on the continent, by setting up these institutes so that the country now becomes focused on Chinese language. For what? No, we can't.
All right. Another question. When we talk about the diaspora coming back and bringing skills and what they've learned from other cultures, most often we talk about, the African Americans or the Caribbeans or the African migrants that come for all the issues and now have gotten access into know-how and technology or education. We barely talked about Africans in China. Why not? These are also part of the skills that we need back on the continent. They've stayed with them.
Well, yes, if they've been there and they've learned skills and they bring it back to the continent, all well and good. But I don't think they're as much in terms of population numbers than Africans in the diaspora in America, in the Caribbean, in South America. We're talking about minimum, amounts of people in China where they went there to learn, not to learn, but to start trading and bringing back goods, cheap goods in the main, to the continent. So yes, if they've learned something, if they've been able to learn something from there, that they've seen something novel and bring it back, that's fine. But we must concentrate on the migration of repopulation. And where will we get the greatest number of migrants? It will be the African Americans, the African Caribbean, the African South America. That's where we'll get the numbers to repopulate Africa, and that we must focus on. Ghana did a good job by having Operation Joseph and inviting African Americans to come back home and stay, and many have, and many did. And all African countries must open up in the same way, invite back and have free access to our people, free access to our people back home. The African Free Trade Area, which has just been started, we have to now move the borders and let us be able to move around the continent freely, travel around the continent freely, not leave and have to go to a European country and then come back to your own country. I mean, it's all nonsensical, you know. And we must now be able to travel, trade freely within the continent so that Africans can empower themselves and Africans take the benefit of doing business between themselves and among themselves. It is important that we look at these in realistic terms, that if we have to change the Africa that was to the Africa we want, and if it is Africans are doing it for themselves, by themselves, African solutions to African problems, Africans have to do it. So we have to break down the barriers. We have to reintegrate our people from wherever they are, as you said, whether they're in China, bring them back home, ask them to come back home and bring their skills, bring their investment, you know, bring whatever they have, but repopulate Africa with Africans, not depopulate Africa with Chinese and others. No. Change the narrative, change the paradigm.
Okay. How do we do as a strategy? Also have a lot of Africans that do business with Chinese and they bring in all this stuff. If you look at the African local markets now, they're filled with Chinese goods, but they're not even the Chinese that are there. They're Africans that are actually flogging out, particularly what you talk about, these toxic goods or clothing, so what that are not actually, or that is, you know, like a dumping for the African market. What kind of regulations should we put to that? Should be.
Well, then it is the local bureaus of standards in each of our country on the continent who must examine, right, what they are bringing in, because most of these people just come in with containers, and there's no examination on the standards of what they are brought in. It is enforcement. So against our own people, if you want to participate with these people to bringing shoddy goods and worthless pieces of equipment, etc., which you know, goes bad in no time at all. It is our own bureaus of standards, whether it's food, drug administration, control. They are the ones who have to enforce it, and I think every African country has that. They do have a bureau of standards, and they do have an enforcement agency to look at these things. And some of them just turn a blind eye. It has to be enforced. So if our own people are collaborating with them to undermine our own people with bad goods and services, then we have to enforce it against them too. It is important. It's the discipline.
Correct. So it's right, as we were talking about the lack of a unique culture. So this also fall in compliance of the culture of consumption of the African. What do I consume? In every other community, you see consume local. So that should be a regulation, should be 60%. And then we look at what we don't have, and then we complement. Or
Exactly.
it is absolutely just China in Africa.
What's that? Sorry, I didn't hear that clearly.
Yes, I mean, like the consumption or the trade relation should also have a kind of like local consumption and production, and 30% of supplement what we don't have, isn't it? I take the clear example of herbals. If you look at the herbal alternatives as medicinal plants that are floating on the continent, China hits the whole market. You go everywhere, it's Chinese dry leaves for teas, for whatever, and all these things we have them at our back. So what is that like? Education of the African?
Yeah. Well, you know, we tend to quickly move away from what has been used before and look at and think that because it's marketing, it's branding, and it's selling, right? People brand this, brand that, market this, market that, but we move away from what we already have had. and do not market it ourselves. So we need to now look into what we have and make it our own, market it to our own, and then anything else that we require, get to learn about it. But part of the learning of that is analyzing what else do we need and who is going to do it for us. Mostly, we should research whatever we think is missing and try to produce it ourselves, whichever way they can.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Everything is good. Everything is okay. Do we need to support? When is this APLA? You call it APLA, APLA, the
African People's Liberation Army. We start now. I've said it, so everybody needs to just constitute, their own units of African People's Liberation Army wherever they are. It is for them to take the leadership. They take it on their own, move it on their own, and they don't need anybody else. It's all self-starting. Everybody set up their own initiative. They've heard from you what are the concerns. They've heard from me how to tackle some of those concerns. And this is an African solution. As Afrocacy says, African solutions to African problems. We have a problem, we now apply our own African solution to it. Africans doing it for themselves, by themselves. So they take up by themselves to do it by themselves. We are all self-starters. We are all a unit of activity. We are all a unit of resistance. So be active. Get started wherever you are. You don't have to wait for anybody. You have the solutions. You have the guidance. If you need more, they can always talk to you. They can always talk to any of us, any of the elders mentoring, our African youths. If you have any concerns, yes, we will help you. We'll tell you what to do. But from what you've heard, many people know what to do now and can do what they need to do on their own. They don't need for anybody to spoon feed them. Get active, get involved, insensitize, inspire the others. Just take yourself up and say, right, we're going to do it, and do it. That's what we call implementation. Time for talking, as I said, is over. We have too many people that give beautiful speeches, talk a lot of pontifications of, the English language or whatever. But where is the implementation? What is the implementation plan? How are you going to implement to follow what you have said? Many people just make statements, but they have no clue as to what to do and how to do it. That's what we are doing. Afrocacy. We are saying Africans must do it for themselves, by themselves. Don't wait and don't talking and talking and talk. We will talk from now whilst they're inching towards depopulating our continent. So you stop it. That's implementation. You stop it by having the organization that you need to stop it, and look at the areas that you need to investigate to stop it. So we've given some answers this evening to some of the concerns that you highlighted in your list there by the survey you've done around, Africa and around the world. We are offering how to go about, how to tackle those issues. And those issues are plain and simple. Form yourself into units of an African People's Liberation Army, because that's what we did in the past to liberate ourselves from other colonialists, other colonizers. So now we know that there's a plan that's already in place, that's already taken place in some countries, of subtle colonization. We now have to do a resistance movement, which is a liberation army. And that liberation army now, we're not fighting with guns at the moment, but we fight them with policy, we fight them with frameworks, we fight them with enforcement, we fight them with monitoring, we fight them with compliance, we fight them with penalty, and we fight them with kicking them out of our country. It's as simple as that, and off the continent. So that's the first stage. If the resistance gets, more militaristic, we take up arms, because that's what we had to do in all the other liberation armies, MPLA, all of them. We took up arms. So if we find that the colonizer is being stubborn and wants to enforce his way and his will, we take up arms and take it up early. That's what we had to do to free ourselves, didn't we? From all the colonial powers on the continent. But there's a new colonial country planning to do what we had to fight against over the past 200 years. So now we have to nip it in the bud. Don't wait for it to get to a stage where we have to take up arms. But if we have to take up arms, we must. There is no doubt about that. We have to fight the enemy within right now and make them know that they have to work within our structure, work within our policy, work within our plans, and you come and work with us on an equal basis. We are not your slaves. We are not your laborers. We have to stop all that. We have to stop all that, because that's how they see us. When you talk about they see us as monkeys, etc., we smell. What does that say? That is saying, as far as they're concerned, go down there on the continent, treat them however you need to. They are not humans. No, we have to stop that narrative. We have to stop that version of how they see us, and let them know that we will face you one-on-one. We will face you one-on-one. Be bold, be brave, be active, be inspired. We must do that as Africans, as the youth of the continent, who are the future of the continent. So you have to plan, you have to fortify yourself now, because that's what you'll be facing in the future if you don't act now. So we must act now. It's no longer business as usual. That's what they are all thinking. Oh, it's business as usual. Go down to Africa, any village, don't worry. You can do whatever you want. Once you pay some money to the government and you pay some money to some officials, do what you want. Look at the horror in the past 2 weeks. Chinese beating up a local official. Chinese locking up a girl in a store with handcuffs. Chinese are going on television saying that you all are monkeys, I'm only here to make money. So as far as they're concerned, we are a degraded human species. So they have no respect for us. So we too now must have no respect for them. We have to fight fire with fire. Let's start first with policy. Let's start first with framework. Let's start first with monitoring. Let's start first with enforcement and compliance. And when we have run that and exhausted that whole course, and they still insist on a colonial approach, then we fight fire with fire.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
It has been a wonderful pleasure to have you on the show, on the Pan-African Daily. We are very, very grateful to have you, to spark up the energy and the revolutionary spirit of the young Africans wherever they are, the spirit of their forefathers that died, or martyrs of today. We're thinking about the mothers, the Winnie Mandelas, who rose up and defended with every drop of their blood their nation, their land, their people, their race, their economy, even their tradition. So that spirit is dormant. It is outside. It has been adjusted by other cultures, by other systems into the African, and has taught the African forgive. If they slap this cheek, give this cheek. But they don't teach themselves that. They don't. Now the African, instead of just say, oh, we are nice people, we are lovely people, we are peaceful people.
We're welcoming people. No, the revolutionary spirit must now be re-engendered. Because we have that revolutionary spirit. We are when pushed against the wall. But let's not wait until we are pushed against the wall. Let us start now and be proactive. Before we were reactive. And be reactive, we lost a lot of lives. We lost a lot over, years of being reactive after we saw that we gave people welcoming African tradition, inviting them and they took advantage. Do not allow it to happen again now. Let's be proactive. Let all young Africans and Africans in general, wherever they are, be proactive. Don't be reactive. Because by the time you're reactive, they already, have solidified and consolidated what they want to do. We have to be proactive now. Let's get proactive. Let's start the African People's Liberation Army immediately. Let everywhere, every corner of Africa, every village, every community start their own African People's Liberation Army unit. Start up a unit so you start doing the job of monitoring your enemy within right now. That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I see in the chat some very inspiring and active reactions already. I see people saying, oh, I have an army of 100 in my community, and they're just going to do that. And we would like to. Yes, we would like to.
Fantastic. Yes. Fantastic. Every community, if you have 100 people, that is your resource. Put on the BlackBerry and put on the logo. Let them know and let everybody know you have risen up. Africa must rise up, and Africa has risen up. Africa is awake. The youths are awake, and they are not prepared to take the bullshit anymore. They have to work and get rid of the enemy within. Do it. It is there to be taken. Your country is there to be taken back. Your community is there to be taken back. Your village is there to be taken back. Do not allow the elder, foolish leaders who are corrupt and who have corrupted your country, and ensure that you are living in poverty. It has to stop. It pains me to walk any street in Africa and see how many people we have living on the streets. On the streets, when there is so much wealth in the country, but it is being harvested by these people. No. Africans have to take charge. We must take charge. And it's the youth that will take charge right now.
Thank you. I have a comment that was dropped in our chat to remind us that Africans, he says, or she, I don't know, Africans have to realize that we hate ourselves, or we are not peaceful people, but we channel the anger melted upon us by the enemies among us. So when we are heated outside, then we come and destroy our own very self. So we have to transport that energy or that anger back to the enemy. Do you comply?
So what I'm saying is this. Forget about fighting between ourselves, because they love when we are at war with ourselves. They even provide the ammunition for us to kill ourselves. That is an easy task for them. Realize that you have an enemy within. Realize that you're going to lose your country. Realize you're going to lose your continent. And say, hey, let's wake up. We are brothers. Let's fight the common enemy. Brothers fight the common enemy. Then they can go back to arguments. And let's decide on this or that. But if you allow the enemy to overcome you, you don't even have, a brother to look at. You understand what I'm saying? You are being taken over. You are being ostracized as a family unit. You're being ostracized as a tribe. You're being ostracized as a community. You're being ostracized as a village and as a country. So we start at the core. Forget about internecine warfare. Forget about ethnic warfare. Forget about religious warfare. Unite. Unite under one cause, that you are now a People's Liberation Army, to fight common enemy and common enemies, because we have other enemies. But start with the near and present danger, which is clear. The clear and present danger is clear. Start with that first. Then you replicate against the others.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellency. I think we've come to the end of this conversation with you. No matter how we say, we're just going to be redundantly repeating the same thing, but with the same message out there. We want to thank you so much, and we'll keep in touch with you, give you the feedback, stay connected. what is happening in the communities. It is a challenge that has been thrown out there to the African community. You asked and you've been given the solution. Pick up those solutions, put them into a structure. If you're ready, come back and tell us how much you are going or what you're going. If you need assistance and support and direction, to us, connect to us, and we will give you the right channel to the people that are involved. Thank you so very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. So we're coming to the end of this program, and I want to thank all of you that have watched and you've shared, and we look forward that you comment in the chat. What is the way forward? How are you organizing? We want to get feedbacks from how you are mobilizing your community. The most important thing is we understand that we are no longer friends of any, like Professor James Small is saying. Our guests have been teaching us the same thing, because we are looking at our challenges and looking for solutions which no other person can provide but us. So when these solutions are coming up and the speakers come here to tell you from their experience, from their past, and to energize that spirit of your forefathers that were great warriors and liberators. We've heard it a couple of times here. Your history is not going to be spoken or written by some other person, but it's going to be given to you by your ancestors, the ones that are alive. When we say ancestors, not only those are gone. Yeah. So we have them living here and keep telling us every day what is the way forward. And as you know, we Africans, we don't have a literature, we don't have books. That was never our culture. We have a spirit or a cycle of storytelling. So exactly what we call news is for the African a storytelling. It is a passation of information from a generation to the next generation. So we will update you on an storytelling for tomorrow, who is going to be we are going to have another session with Rev Shop Philip Matthews, who has always been consistent, precise, and concise for the 30 years on one thing. Nothing is wrong with you, Africans. Something happened to you. So we're going to get into series 5 with Rev Shop Matthew tomorrow, and he's actually going to tell us what is the way forward to this action plan to APLA. What is it that you really need to know to understand that you were not like this? You were exactly what His Excellency is saying here. You are children of martyrs and great warriors and freedom fighters and liberators, because the whole world has enemies. China has its own enemies, Europe as well, and every country builds its own people to protect the integrity of their continent. Why not you Africans? If your ancestors did and built pyramids, if your mothers did and fought and raised an army, if your mothers did to raise children, carry them with no health care, no facilities, and our grandmothers could nurture up to 10, 15, our fathers could marry many wives and produce a nation that you are today, we would have been wiped off. We would have been wiped off from the series of wars that we face on the continent. But because your fathers, your mother ancestors were warriors, they have maintained that status quo, and the stick is being passed on to you. Do as they did, not as they tell you that they thought they did. Do as they do. So today, our lesson for today is get back to work. Hard work ain't diligence. That is the motto of the APLA. Hard work and diligence. So we have to our modesty, our arrogance, our comfort zones. We have to trade off. You can still be a comfort, you can still enjoy life, but you're conscious. You're just conscious who your enemy around you is. We call them enemy. We say Africans don't have friends. So if we don't have friends, what do we have? And every country knows somebody always wants something from you. It's not only Africa, even the whole world. That's why the whole world put their own army, put their security, put their defense, train their people to become their own animal. Germany is the same. Every German, I am a German army to the Germans. I live in Germany. I watch my environment. If there's anything that is destroyed, it. Why not, Africans? Check your environment. Be your, we say brothers keepers. Brothers keepers is not enough. Brothers defender. defend your every little territory. When they give us integration policies and we integrate into that and we become armies of their nation because we live here, we operate here, we earn a living here. So you have to protect the integrity of the land. But we come from a continent, from a race and a people first. So exactly as they taught us to do in their own system, we are teaching you to do exactly that in your systems. Nobody, if you integrate a foreigner on the continent of Africa, they have to stick to the values of your continent. We do, and we respect. And we also, and when we fault these laws and regulations, we pay a penalty. Why not you? Why not you? I am accountable to my government. Any little thing I do, they don't consider you an African because you're just black. They consider me a German. If I go against the authorities, you pay for it. Consequences, exactly on the continent. Don't consider any person a foreigner that will have some advantages. Why? Who has to protect you and your environment and your continent? You and no other person. They're going to destroy it and they leave back because they have another home, right? But you have only the continent and your people. So big up, people. We see ourselves here tomorrow. Don't worry about my camera and the images acting. Listen to the message and not see me. I'm not important. Take the spirit and not the physical. Okay. So I share. We see us tomorrow with Rev Shock live on the Pan-African Daily TV. Have a wonderful, pleasant evening out there. We see us tomorrow.